Hey, I'm Alex Radical from Board Game Co. And today I'm reviewing Buru, a game that I can't stop calling. This is literally my fourth take. I keep calling it Buru because on the cover it says Buru twice upside down, and so I got stuck on that, unfortunately. But Buru by Crafty Games, a game currently on Kickstarter, link down below. There's only a few days left to back this one, so make sure to check that out. My late coverage of this is because I got this game mid-campaign. I had an opportunity to play it on TTS. They sent me a prototype. TTS is Tabletop Simulator, for those who don't know. I enjoyed my play. They sent me a prototype. I got a few more plays in, and now we have the review part of things. So, Buru, what is going on in this game? This is a game where ultimately it's all about blind bidding to go through a sequence of actions or events to ultimately acquire the resources you need to make offerings which will give you chunks of points. That is the core concept of the game. Blind bidding to get your actions, get the most efficient actions, trade in resources, get the offerings to the gods, and then call that a day. It seems fairly simple, and actually it is, but not in a bad way. You see, the game sequence is going to ultimately involve players taking their little hidden bids, anything ranging from 1 to 5, and then secretly choosing which action they want to take. I'm going to go ahead and place this down. In fact, this is early game, first game turn, so the village would be an obvious pick, but I don't like obvious picks, so I'm going to go ahead and be special and different, because I've always been special and different my whole life. That's what my mother used to tell me. So I'm going to go ahead and put one down the shore. The shore and the village are going to be obvious starting game. I forgot. We got to turn over one of these tokens over here. We're going to put this in the shore, making the shore an even better spot. I'll get an extra point this round. Awesome. This player's going to go ahead, and they're going to go ahead for the obvious pick to the village. We're going to have another player putting this one over here, and then just go around and around. We can go. Now, you could double up if you want. I don't know if I want to, but we'll see. Maybe we'll talk about it. I'm actually going to go ahead and take one of these and go straight down to over here. That's the tableau area, so that's going to be an extra expansion area over there. That's not in the base game, to be very clear, but I do like it. In fact, my recommendation from Buru goes from, well, we'll talk about it. We'll get to it at the end. But we're going to keep going around and around, We're going to put one over here. Let's say, you know what? Nope, we're going to compete over there. I'm not happy that they're competing over there. I'm not. But you know what? I'll live with it. We're going to take one of these again and toss that over there. Someone's competing up there. We're going to grab one, put it. I do want to, you know what? I'm going to go one over there. We're going to go over here, putting this one. We're going to have another one double up over there. I want to leave that. So I'm going to keep that. In fact, probably should have done, whatever. It's too late now. I'm not going to change my move. It's a fake game anyway. I'm going to go ahead and finally, I'm going to go down to the forest. The forest is an essential spot. Not essential, but it's close to essential. We're going to have this player go ahead, and I could go over here. Let's go ahead and go over here, and then finally we'll have that phantom player, and there is a phantom player, my little thing that I'm doing over here. We're going to go over there, and that makes no sense. No reason I would go there at all. We're going to go over there. Great. Now that we've done that, we're going to go ahead and resolve in each region. So starting in the forest, we're going to go ahead and resolve, flipping over the tokens, and the person who has the highest token, the person who has the highest number, gets to choose which action they want. So yellow over here, yellow who's not even playing, is going to go ahead and choose, well, in this case, it doesn't really matter where you go because you're choosing one of the cards at the top. They're all giving you a card. It's the choice of card that's going to help you. So yellow's going to go over here, and yellow's going to choose this card over here. They do show you the relative value on the bottom with those pips. General idea is more pips are better, but we're going to take these resources over here, and that card goes over there, and yellow's got those resources. Then white is going to go ahead and take the next highest card. Sometimes you'll want to take a card that's lower. Generally, you want to take the best resource card, and that leaves red with one more card. So white went over there. When red goes ahead and takes the, let's see, red's going to take, well, I guess this one over here. That seems to be an obvious choice. I don't know why I paused at all. And that's going to be red's resources over there. From there, since yellow won this area, they're going to go ahead and take this, which is relevant for offerings. We'll talk about that later. From there, we're going to go to the next region. The next region is where you're going to have the opportunity to take different villagers. Here's where the actions will be different. So for instance, over here, this action is taking 2 of the villagers. This one's going to be taking 1 villager and cycle the market. You can do that in either order. This is taking 2 villagers and cycle the market. You can see the basic idea, 1 villager, 1 villager. In this case, we're going to flip them, and we have a tie. Now, ties are always reserved clockwise from the person who has this first player marker, which you can try to get over here. So we're going to go ahead, and because we have that tie, we're going to go ahead, and white's going to go first, and white is going to take 2 cards and cycle the market. Now, I'm not actually going to take the cards because I just want to show you the sequence, but you would take these ability cards over here. These are effectively the tableau building that'll be going on in the game. From there, you know, red can go ahead and take their cards as well and choose. Meanwhile, white as well is going to get that extra point because they, well, were first over there. So boom, they got a point. Moving over here, we have the village. The village is where you're going to actually activate your villagers. For each hand symbol you see, you can activate 1 villager, which means early game it's not usually as beneficial. I mean, activating 3 villagers early game is useless because you won't have 3 villagers early game. So you can see over here, you can go through these. They're going to be activating villagers and giving you fish, but this is essential to activate those villagers. As the game goes on, as you build up your tableau, you're going to want to activate those villagers, which makes the village, well, essential. From there, we're going to move to the Sacred Lake. The Sacred Lake is going to be the primary way you make offerings in this game. In the Sacred Lake, you can make 2 offerings over here. Let's go ahead and reveal, see who won. Half of these are placed blindly. So in this case, we're going to have red go first, because red is first clockwise from the first player marker. And over here, you can make 2 offerings and take an elder card, make 2 offerings, an offering and an elder card, an offering and first player, and an offering. It's very important to point out, you don't have to go to the first spot if you win. You could choose to go, for red over here may say, you know what, I'd rather be first player and do 1 offering. And that's totally fine. You can do that. So that's going to be the general sequence of the Sacred Lake. Finally, we have Ambla over here. Ambla is going to have a little bit of a different mechanic as you advance your ships equal to the number played. So for example, white over here, they're, 5. They're ambitious. So we're going to go ahead and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now it's important to note you could go up to 5. So in this case, I may well want to go over here to instead get an extra villager next turn, which would be helpful, actually. That would give me an extra action. But I'm going to stick with this one over here, taking 1 of each resource. I'm going to take 1 of these, 1 of this, 1 of that, and as well as that, I'm going to up my fish by 1. Fish is tracked on your board as opposed to having a resource. And that is going to be the Amblau area over here. The Amblau area, as you go around and around, you'll cycle. It's important to note that you do not land on other players. If someone else, for instance, let's go ahead and do the red. Red goes 1, 2, stays there. And then yellow can go 1, 2. They can skip it. You don't count skip it, but if you land on it, you would skip it. That is basically going to be the 5 areas of the board. So, how do these all interplay in this game? So, once again, this is going to be a blind bidding game. You are placing down your tokens randomly, not randomly, 1 at a time, trying to make judgments about where people went, in what order they went, what is most beneficial for them, what's most beneficial for yourself, and then trying to ultimately get a bunch of stuff. Why do you want stuff? Well, you want goods because goods are going to be essential for offerings. When you make an offering, you're going to choose one of these gods over here, although this god of Ibu is only relevant for Ambao, it's a little different, but you'll choose from your other 3 offerings, and you'll trade in the relevant tokens to get a card. Trading in the relevant tokens to get a card, the relevant tokens to get a card. All of these cards are effectively going to have points on them. They're going to range. So for example, if we go to the altar of Banyu, we can go ahead and get 6 points for making an offering there. Or alternatively, we can get 4 points. All the cards over here are going to range between 4, 5, and 6. Different offerings have different systems in place. Ibu is going to reward you for having more Ibu cards. You get 2 points plus 1 for each Ibu card. So the more Ibu cards you have, that can be an incredibly strong strategy if you go heavy on Ibu over there. The altar of guns is going to go ahead and give you more points, but this time ranging from 3 to 5 instead of 4 to 6. And then the altar of Manuk is going to give you even fewer points, giving you from 3, well, that's a larger spread over here. We have between 3 and 6, but it's a larger spread of points. So more variety, more choice for highs, but also you can get those 3s just as easily. Those are going to be the offerings. So that's why you want to go to the forest. You want resources. Resources, good. Further, we have the shore. The shore is where you're going to effectively build up your tableau. There's going to be 4 types of villagers. Some villagers, the foragers, are going to basically, well, not the foragers, the class they are, I don't remember the name. Whenever you acquire a villager, to be very clear, you have to pay for them. They have a fish cost in the upper right corner. You do have to pay for those, so it's not necessarily as cool as you thought. Still cool. I like tableau building. I like building up powers and abilities, but you do have to pay for them. But they're going to give you actions you can take every turn. So when you take those actions by going to the village, you can go ahead, for instance, and take either one of these resources. So that's going to be, these guys are going to give you resources. We're going to have these nobles over here. The nobles are going to give you points as well as different options and actions on them. Then we have the traders who are going to trade resources for other resources. You can discard 2 fish for 2 leaves. You can discard a leaf for 2 fish. And then lastly, we're going to have over here, perfect, we have I can't remember the name of them, the priests, I think, I believe they're priests, I don't know. But either way, they're going to allow you to make offerings. And again, they're going to be different in the actual abilities. That's the general genre of what each of these are doing. So if you have this priest over here, when you activate it, you can make an offering without going to the offering spot, giving you another way to build up your tableau. You don't have to fight for winning in the Sacred Lake. You can just make offerings regardless. Although, granted, once per turn, so maybe it is good, maybe it isn't good. It may or may not be the right move in this game, by the way. Didn't talk about this part yet, but this game is a 5-round game. You're going to go around and around doing those actions. So we have there, the villager is going to be over here where you activate those villagers we just talked about. And then finally, Amblau gives you resources. It gives you an extra worker that you can place every round. And then finally, it's going to let you make offerings to Ibu. Whenever you go to one of these spots with the Ibu token, you can go ahead and make an offering to Ibu. Now, we didn't talk about these guys. These guys, whoever controls these, they get an extra point whenever someone makes an offering to that god. So it's a little bit of an extra thing to keep in mind of, oh, you know, if someone's going to make an offering to this god, well, if 2 people make an offering to this god, to Ganung, then I'll get an extra 2 points. Those points can add up throughout the course of the round. A few other things we didn't talk about. First of all, you can double up. I touched upon that briefly, but effectively, you see this tile over here, had red instead put their 2 over here secretly, then they would effectively have a 6 to my 4. Most of the time, you're going to want 2 different actions as opposed to locking yourself in for that stronger action, but I guarantee you there are times when that is not true. There are times when you are going to want that stronger action, so factor that into your plans accordingly. And then lastly, your remaining token is going to choose how much extra fish you get. Whichever token stays home, that person goes fishing, and boom, I'm up to 7 fish. That's going to be useful for all the villagers I'm buying. That is effectively Buru. That is the core concept of this game, everything going on here. Like I said before, blind bidding to choose a variety of actions to ultimately define how many resources you get to make the most efficient offerings to the gods. We didn't talk about noble cards, I'll talk about those. Noble cards are going to give you things to try to strive for in the game. So for instance, this noble is going to reward me for getting elders. If I have 2 elders at the end of the game, I get 1 point. If I have 5 plus elders, I get 3 points. Now that may not seem like a lot, but points are not that easy to come by in this game. Getting a chunk of points and a few extra elder cards here and there can very quickly add up to extra points that will be very useful in, well, trying to win in Buru. That is the game. That is the core idea. There's a few other expansion modules that Amblau will introduce. So the core game over here is basically everything I taught you, less this sideboard. Less that is going to be the core game. Adding the Amblau sideboard gives you another area to place your workers, another concept to think through, another strategic aspect of kind of a jack of all trades, because it lets you make offerings, it gives you extra workers, it lets you get extra resources, a lot of small things. Sometimes it lets you activate your people as well, your villagers. So it gives you a bunch of extra things to consider in this little wildcard expansion. It includes a few modules as well, including a 5th player expansion, but that is basically going to be the core idea of Buru. So, what do I like with the game? To begin with, the blind bidding is always a lot of fun. There's not a lot of games that I've played that have blind bidding. There are definitely some. I remember Aladdin's Dragons, other games. Blind bidding to lock in a better placement, or perhaps the only placement, is a concept that I generally enjoy in games. It's not for everyone, to be very clear. The frustration, I would say it depends. Like in games where you can lose your action entirely, it is more frustrating. In games where it's about getting the better action as opposed to getting the action at all, I would say it's less inherently frustrating, but I like the little dynamic. I like the play of trying to think through what is most important for me. Where do I want to go? Sometimes you lock in that 1 because you don't even care. Dumping a 1 someone makes someone else, like if you start your turn by being, boom, 1 in the forest. Well, don't say it out loud. That'll ruin things for people. But if you say, boom, going in the forest, as a starting action, people can suddenly get in their own heads of, wait, no, he wants that better card. We may as well just start fighting for that. Meanwhile, you really want to go somewhere else, but at least with that 1, you'll still lock in a card. You will still get something for your 1, so it's not wasted. It's just a little way of playing mind games with people in the order you place things down, but also that 1 can also be equally powerful to eke out a win somewhere else. Knowing that there is a powerful action you want somewhere, knowing there is a good combination of things that will work for you this turn, means you can put down your 5 somewhere, and then when other people seem like they're going there, you can double up with your 1 on your last move before they can counter, or perhaps they could still counter, but they didn't plan around that, and they now have to completely rethink what is worth it to them or not. I generally enjoy the tenseness of the blind bidding, the considerations you have to take into account as you go through that sequence, as you think through where to put people, as you go to Amblau and decide, is it worth making an offering to Ibu because that's going to help me continue stack up those god cards, or maybe I'd rather get an extra person because that will give me a full extra action next round. That is impactful. I want all the things, and I can't have all the things, so how do I ultimately make decisions in this game? The ability to double up adds to that strategy. The ability to think through where you're going to put things down, how you're going to get what you need of it. It's all a lot of fun. The passing to get fish, more choices to make. You can get anywhere between 1 fish and 5 fish just by passing. If you're willing to give up a little bit of competitive advantage of competing and fighting over this main board, you can walk away with 5 fish next round, which can be incredibly helpful to buying more villagers, to buff up your tableau. And speaking of buffing up tableau, I mean, I like tableau building and powers and abilities. Getting more cards, while the core actions in this game will give you a decent amount, you'll get things cycling. In only 5 rounds, you kind of want to get every little advantage you can. And so getting a bunch of villagers, and villagers that perhaps work together, perhaps don't, ideally you want the ones that work together. It is better if you do that. Those will all give you more options to do. So getting more villagers and being able to activate those villagers, because if you get them and don't activate them, they're less useful. Not useful. They can still be useful for elder gods. Some of them have other things in them. We haven't even talked about the cards that you can immediately discard for offerings, stuff like that. But there's a lot to consider as you buff up your tableau. And then the decrees give you slight modifications to your strategic choice. Anything from, well, these cards, the elder cards you get the decrees that come out wherever, putting in a new spot. We have the village. Boom, whoever goes to the village is going to get extra resources this round. So all these small little subtle things shift up what you're going for and what choices you need to make as you ultimately are trying to go through what is a fairly direct pathway of bid, get resources, trade resources in for offerings. That is basically the core idea of Buru, but the way you go through that path and where you choose to fight, where you choose to double up, where you choose to spend your attention, all those are going to be the things that decide for you whether Buru is, well, how strategic of a game Buru will be. Now, there are some things I did not like about Buru to begin with. I just mentioned that the game is fairly sequential in nature. Now, if you remove the Amblau expansion, I don't even know if I want Buru without the Amblau expansion. The game, while the game is a solid engine of choices you have to go through, at the same time, it is very sequential. You go to the forest to get resources, you go to the shore to get the characters that will give you a little bit of variety, then you go to the village to activate the characters. Characters without activating them is useless, so those go hand in hand, and then you go make offerings. So without the Amblau expansion, the strategic direction of the game is a little too narrow for me. Still giving you choice in the way you proceed down that path, but it very clearly is a linear path in that game. When you introduce the Amblau expansion, it gives you more variety. There's more to consider and more things to think about. But I would say that even with the Amblau expansion, it is still fairly direct in the pathway it's providing. And without the Amblau expansion, it's way too direct. Past that, the cards don't feel as exciting as I'd like. As you go through these cards, anything from the offering cards to the elder cards are decent. They give you a lot of different things they'll score for, but most of the offering cards are basically just points in them. Nothing interesting past the point number on them. And then even these cards for the villagers, they're all just small variations of the same concepts, all just giving you an extra resource, or trade extra resource, or make an offering, or take in the card. They don't really have anything that dramatically shifts up the game in any way. They are fine. I still want them. They are important parts of my tableau, but I would ideally want more creative cards, more interesting cards, more things that give you stuff you can do. You can bump up one on one of these tracks. You can, I don't know, take one of the gods from one of the players. There's a whole bunch of things you probably could do with these cards, but they are keeping it fairly linear in what the cards are doing as well. For a 5-round game, speaking of cards, for a 5-round game, getting tableau cards past round 3, like getting tableau cards in rounds 4 and 5 doesn't feel as rewarding as I'd like, which means I'm kind of locked into the strategy or this thought process. And I could be wrong strategically, but just instinctively when I've played, getting cards in rounds 1, 2, and 3 makes sense. Great, I get them, I activate them, I can still activate them in round 3, 4, and 5, that's awesome. Getting cards in round 4, I mean, it's useful if you have elder cards that will acquire them. If you have these cards that will acquire them, it's useful, but past that, you're like only limiting your actions. If you get a card in round 4, you can activate it twice. If you get a card in round 5, you can activate it once. So for a fairly short game, those cards do see a drop off, and because they are mostly in-game abilities, because they are mostly things that you activate in the game as opposed to being some form of end-game scoring, I almost feel the game could benefit from a second deck that in round 4 you shift to a different deck that is more point-based, that gives you more options there. So it's, again, still like the cards, but for a shorter game, they have limited use at least from what I can see as I played. And then lastly, and not the biggest thing for me, it depends on how you take it, but Buru is a game that plays 2 to 4 players, and I think, well, it actually has a solo mode as well. You can play it 1 to 4 players with the expansion 1 to 5, and this is a game that I don't consider it a 2-player game. This is my own personal bias as the way I work with games. I do not like, as a firm statement, I do not like automated players in games. Now, to be very clear, I have not played with Buru's automated player, but I have never, and the reason for it is because I don't want to play with Buru's automated player. From what I can see in the rules, it's fairly simple. It's not like a huge tactical decision. It's fairly simple to implement. You can have that player thrown in, no problem. There are 0 games that I can think of that include an automated third player that I like enough to play over choosing another game instead. For me, Buru is a game that I will not play at 2. I haven't looked into the solo mode. Solo mode I sometimes feel a little bit different about, just the nature of the dynamics at play, but I'm just not interested in that automated third player just messing up my thoughtful placement because they have a token where it's going to frustrate me instead. Does the game flow work? Sure. Does the frustration come along with it? Again, have not played the automated third player in Buru, to be very clear, but for me, looking at the box, looking at the game, I would consider it a 3 to 5 player game, just my own personal bias around automated third players and automated players in general in games. As far as I can see, others not liking, there's really just 2 things here. To begin with, you can have bad rounds in this game. You can have rounds where no matter how you placed it, your 4 gets beaten by a 5, your 3 gets beaten by a 4, your 2 gets beaten by a 3, and your 1 well, your 1's always going to get beaten. But you can have, or your 5 gets beaten because someone else combined their 1 and their 5 together to beat you. you. You can have rounds where you don't get any of the advantages, any of the core wins in any of these arenas. And so you may find that frustrating. Now, I find that that rarely does happen. Usually you'll win some, you'll lose some. Some things you plan for, you'll get. Other things you'll get second or third best, and that's fine. That is the nature of a blind bidding game. But there will be occasional rounds where you just don't win anything, although the flip side is that means someone else is winning a lot more in those rounds. But I would say more importantly, the points from the offerings, I'm not sure. Like, it didn't bother me a lot, but it's certainly something I debated putting this in what I don't like versus what I can see others not liking. I have ended up putting in what I can see others not liking, but it is one. I mean, you can have rounds where you can just draw. There's going to be a 3-point spread on 2 of these piles, a 4-point spread on the other piles, which means you can draw cards. You can go to offerings 3 turns in a row and get the low cards. And you can have someone else going to the offerings 3 turns in a row and getting the high cards in any game. And the only reason I've included this in what I can see others not liking and not my own personal dislike is because I haven't seen that happen yet. Generally, across multiple offerings, the points do average out. But for a game that is otherwise so thoughtful, so tactically sound of what you're doing, having just random point spreads on those offerings, if it doesn't average out across the course of 3 or 4 offerings, you could have a game literally won or lost by the luck of the draw. I wish the offerings were either more standardized, more interesting, more variable, more giving you rewards for different things in the game, as opposed to just a point spread that literally can have the deciding factor on who wins or loses a game in Buru. As far as my final thoughts in Buru, I wrestled with this one. This one is definitely going to be either a 3 or a 4 for me, and I went back and forth because for right now, I am giving it a 4 out of 5. I really like the blind bidding of the game. I really like the core concept of going through this game, fairly short playtime, fairly accessible. This is a prototype, by the way. This is a good time to mention. This is a prototype review. Everything you see here is very much prototype, rules subject to change, all that stuff. So everything is from components to rules, subject to change. But overall, even in its current state, I really enjoyed going through Buru and going through that sequence, even if it is fairly linear. All my complaints are completely the way I felt about this game. There are a lot of small things that had me pivoting between that 3 and the 4, but ultimately, combined with Amblau. Without Amblau, it's at best a 3. I would say it's a 3, not at best. It is a 3 without Amblau for me. Enjoyable game, but not one that I feel the need to play, to own, to whatever. Versus with the Amblau expansion, with all the other things, that intrusives, the other modules, all that stuff, it is one that I've enjoyed going through. It is one that I've enjoyed that blind bidding. I've enjoyed that tableau aspect. I've enjoyed going through the offerings, building up my points, getting these cards, getting rewards at the end of the game, locking in my 5 at the end of the turn to get 5 fish, and then worrying about whatever. There's a lot of small strategic choices you are making throughout the course of this game that do make Buru very rewarding. Now, the part where I said I hesitated is I don't know how Buru will be 10 plays from now. That linear aspect I mentioned is very much a concern. Linear pathways in games, even with the Amblau expansion mixing it up a little bit, that linear pathways in games combined with a lack of interesting cards to keep that engine fresh. If it's a linear pathway, but I'm always interested in which cards I'll build out my engine with, that changes. But the cards are not overly interesting. There are strategic choices to make, but they're not overly interesting. And so combine that and combine the offering cards also not being overly interesting. All that with the linear pathway that this game provides makes me wonder how I'll feel about it 10 plays from now. So it does get a 4 for now, with that little catch that it may drop over multiple more plays as I go through Buru. Like I said, this one is currently on Kickstarter. I'll throw a link down below. Really enjoyed this one with the Amblau expansion. I really do recommend, if you are getting it, to get the Amblau expansion. That perhaps my own bias, but I really think that is an essential component to make Buru a better game. Until next time, I'm Alex Radical from Board Game Co., and I hope you have a good one.